Hi everyone, and welcome to Being a Changemaker, Making a Difference. This is an event to launch the Changemakers Guide from the Open University. I'm Donna Smith. I'm a politics academic at the Open University, and I lead the university's partnership with Parliament, and I'm the host of this evening's webinar. I'd like to introduce Annie Waddington from UK Parliament, OU politics student Lilybell Evergreen, and Rachel Farrington from Voting Counts, who are also helping with the webinar. I'll introduce them properly later, and they can say a bit about who they are, but thank you to them for helping out today. I want to hand over to Lilybell Evergreen now. Lilybell is an OU politics student, and she helped to create the Changemakers Guide and working with students as part. This has been a really important part of this project. So I want to hand over to Lilybell now, who's just going to talk about stage one, getting started.
Yes, so I'll cover some key points of stage one, but you can always read more about it in the guide of the specific detail of each step. So firstly, when you want to make change, it's quite important to do your research on the topic you're passionate about. For example, there might be existing key campaigners and organisations, as well as existing methods of making change that have been successful in the past. It's important to be up to date with the news of the issue, as well as what others' viewpoints are. This can help you to make a stronger argument for making change, as you can anticipate objections and counter them with substantial evidence that you've already got in your back pocket. Another important aspect to getting started is to work out your specific aims. This includes developing clear objectives and a goal for what you'd like to achieve in your campaign. Narrowing down your aims to a specific issue makes it easier for others to engage in your activities, as it's clearer of what you're trying to achieve. And of course, reaching out to others is really important part of making change. You might be able to join an existing campaign, like I said, or you might actually identify a niche where you can start your own campaign or initiative. Either way, working with others is going to be key, both to discuss ideas and, of course, because you can't make widespread change on your own. There's a few things to consider as well about when you're going to make change. For example, things like the timing. Too early and you might not have an impact, and too late and you might not be able to influence the kind of key trend going on. Also, it's important to think about mode. Some examples of communicating your issues are social media, writing a formal report, speaking at public meetings. Think about what you're already good at and what you already have skills in. It's often best to use multiple modes to engage different audiences. And this is the moment that if you've really thought about who you want to reach out to, that might help inform how you might communicate to them. And it's also important to think about the accessibility when you're thinking about communication. So for instance, if you've made a podcast or video, you might want to provide subtitles or a transcript of a speech. Yeah, the guide covers other steps to getting started, which are really useful when planning your campaign. So check it out to begin thinking about some of these things in more detail. And remember, start small and you can always build towards bigger change. So in the guide, we highlight some of the change makers who've inspired both OU students and the wider public. And while some of these change makers undoubtedly already had fame or a platform to help making change from, that's obviously something that's not open to most of us. Still, they all demonstrate how small actions can lead to bigger change, especially by inspiring others to act, raising the profile of important issues, and hopefully making change on a larger scale politically. So one example I'll dive into, who's mentioned in the guide, is Greta Thunberg. Age 15, Greta began weekly demonstrations outside Swedish Parliament to raise awareness about the need for greater climate action. Her actions caught media attention and have since grown into a global youth movement, improving public awareness and prompting politicians to engage more with climate issues. Although her actions have been widely praised, she's also been highly scrutinised by the public, media organisations, and some politicians. Despite this, Greta's shown how effective peaceful protest and small actions can be, especially when they spread on a larger scale. A strength of her approach has been the fact that she targeted a specific issue and used scientific evidence to support her campaign, which are obviously things we've just mentioned to do with the guide. Over the past few years, her influence has grown and she's now one of the most recognisable and influential activists in the world. Greta Thunberg is an inspiring change maker who shows that you don't need an existing platform or a complex strategy to make an impact. Thinking of change makers who inspire you can help you to model your campaign on their methods, and to be inspired to persevere despite any difficulties you may face when making change.
Thank you. That's a really good summary. Okay, so step 3 we call have an impact. And this is actually where a lot of the work happens. So this section describes how you can work with UK Parliament to make change in different ways. So voting is the obvious one. Raising your issue in Parliament via MPs and members of the House of Lords, so asking them to put a question to the House or hold a debate related to an issue. You can work with all party parliamentary groups, so you can ask them to support your cause if it aligns with their agenda. You can submit evidence to a select committee. You can lobby your MP, and you can create a petition via the parliamentary petitions website. And obviously, a lot of those things you can do in the kind of the devolved parliaments as well, including the petition. But we also describe in this step the other ways you can lobby for change outside of Parliament or alongside Parliament. So, as I said, you can work with other parliaments and councils. You can kind of do media activism, whether it's kind of traditional media or kind of social media, peaceful protest. There's events in your local community. Change doesn't always have to be like on a big scale. It could be something you're trying to do in your local community. So kind of events in the community can be a really great way of doing that. Where I live, the village next to mine, they're trying to kind of build a big housing estate. Some people aren't happy, so they're currently kind of holding various events in the local community about that to try and kind of get a group of people together to try and stop it. So I think that's probably the most successful way they can do that. I don't think social media would be particularly apt in that case, but that kind of local community events would be much more appropriate. And there's many more ways as well we describe in the guide. But you need to work out what the best route for change is for your issue. And we also discuss in the guide, this is the kind of the blue bit on the right, we talk about the qualities you need to succeed. I'm not going to go through them, but I think one of the kind of the key ones we mention is the notion of resilience. So I think all of the campaigners we talk about in the guide are very resilient one way or the other and kind of kept on going even with setbacks. I'm going to bring in Annie Waddington here from UK Parliament to talk a little bit more about that. Annie?
Thanks, Donna. Hi, everyone. I work on the public engagement team, and you may not be aware, but it's your democratic right to visit Parliament. And historically, people who wanted to create change and wanted to lobby their MP would come to Parliament and do just that. But we're aware now that people live all over the UK, and some people have limited ability to come all the way down to London to speak to their MP, and we live in a different age. So, our team, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have people working all over the UK who can come and talk to a school or a community group about the work of Parliament. So people don't have to come all the way to London just to engage with us. A lot of what I'm about to tell you now is available on the UK Parliament website, and I would really recommend that you go and have a look on there, because we have a really amazing learning resources, films, games, it just interactive sort of resources online available to everyone that can help you better understand the work of UK Parliament. Some of the ways that we talk to people about that they can do to get involved and influence what happens in Parliament are, well, first thing you think of is your MP. They represent you in Parliament. Develop a relationship with your MP. It's not always easy. It's, I'll be honest, MPs are incredibly busy, but it is genuinely very important for most MPs, if not all that I've met, that they have a good relationship with their constituents. They do genuinely want to make a difference in their constituency. But, as I say, they're not always available. And we also encourage people to reach out to members of the House of Lords who are there, many of whom have amazing expertise in particular areas and represent different regions. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in talking to somebody who works in Parliament, to go on the website and go on Find My MP or Find Your MP, where you can find out a lot more information about individual MPs and also members of the House of Lords. Donna mentioned petitions. You can go on the UK Parliament website. There is a petition section on there, and those petitions are particularly effective if they achieve over, say, 100,000 signatures. It is then taken forward and considered by the government and for a debate in Parliament. So it can be a really, it's a small step, but potentially very effective way of getting a lot of people's voices heard. Register to vote. It's always shocking to find out the number of people who don't vote. And I know that I won't say too much on this because I know this is Rachel's favourite subject, so I won't say too much on this, but you can't vote if you don't register. Select committees, many people, and I mean a huge percentage of people are unaware of select committees. They're unaware of the work of select committees, what they do. Again, I recommend you go on the UK Parliament website. There are some great films that explain what they're responsible for, who work. I mean, select committees are made up of members, but of both the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And they're another effective way of people being able to give evidence in it. If there's an inquiry, there are very often online surveys that you can access via the UK Parliament website. Just another way of getting your voice, your experiences, and providing them to the select committee so that they're actually hearing from the general public. There's another newly formed team called the Chamber Engagement Team, and they have a close relationship with MPs. And again, an MP will contact the Chamber Engagement Team about a particular debate, a particular subject that they want to feel more knowledgeable about, more confident speaking about in the Chamber. And very often this means talking to different communities, talking to specific people with specific life experiences, so that they can hear people's lived experience stories. And again, this is a genuine, tangible way that people are engaging with what's happening in Parliament and getting their voices heard. I know people who recently have spoken to the Chamber Engagement Team and they were quoted in the House of Commons chamber. So there are real tangible ways that you can get involved.
Thank you, Annie. Rachel Farrington's been sitting very patiently waiting for her bit. Rachel is from Voting Counts, and she's going to talk about what she did. Thank you, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. So I won't keep you for long, but I'm just going to tell you a bit about a campaign that I started to perhaps give you some inspiration for all the campaigns that you might want to start using this fantastic resource that the Open University have created. So I think the thing that really struck me the most from that resource that Lilybell went through was about doing your research. When I first started my campaign, my research was very simple. It was talking to my friends. And essentially, I was chatting to my friends one day when I was 17, I was in sixth form. There was an election coming up, and I was the only one out of my friendship group that was doing politics as an A-level. So I started to talk to them saying, you can vote now, what are your plans for the election? And they were all kind of, oh, well, I don't really know what I'm voting for or who I'm voting for. It all confuses me a bit. So I'm just not going to vote. And I couldn't believe this because I was so excited to turn 18 and get my chance to vote as a little bit of a politics nerd that I was like, right, I'm going to convince you to vote. So I created a website called votingcounts.org.uk. I work with people from across the political spectrum to make sure that all of the content on our website has no party political bias. That's really important to us because we believe that people should make their own decisions, decide what's best for them. And we try to provide resources like breakdowns of the manifestos, information about what different MPs might believe, and also that information about how you can contact your local representatives or candidates to get to know them too. So we work a lot with different organisations. We work with volunteers as well around election time to kind of bring that content together. So it really is a combined effort, and that comes nicely back into the Changemaker guide, in that it's about building that support. And definitely on the creation side of things, I've had a lot of support, and it's been really fantastic over the last few years to build this campaign. And then in terms of how we got it out there, so this campaign was very much about creating a resource and then getting it out, this information that we'd collated, out to people so that they could access it and it would then answer their questions. So I used social media. It was free and it was accessible, and I was able to talk to people from all over the country really quickly and easily. And through using social media, I then built up a following, and I was then started to be invited onto more traditional forms of media. So I've done BBC, ITV, I've done Channel 5, I've done lots of news radio, local news radio, talking about elections and trying to convince young people to go out and use their vote. So it's been a real whirlwind campaign, but I wish I'd had a guide like the Open University Guide to kind of give me that hand holding for the first part, because it can be really challenging when you've been tweeting for weeks and you've got 3 followers and then suddenly it happens. And I think it is about kind of putting that time in, getting that support network, and really persisting, because it does take time. I was 17 when I set this up, and I'm now 25, and I'm very close to no longer being able to call myself a young voter myself. But because I was so passionate about this, I've persevered and met some fantastic people along the way, like Annie and Donna. So it's really fantastic to be here, and encourage you all to be the next generation of campaigners. So hope to see all your campaigns soon.
Thanks, Rachel. That's really inspiring. We have 4 stages in the guide. Stage 4, step 4, is called Spread the Word. And I'd like to encourage everyone to do just that, actually. You can read the Changemakers guide. You can read more about UK Parliament Week. You can join the Political Studies Association, including if you're a student. If you're an OU politics student, you can join our OU Open Politics community. That's kind of for internal students only. But I know there are some students here, so please do take a look. You can also post on social media who your Changemaker is. We have an example on the screen, and just going to say who's inspired you politically, democratically, socially. Can be a famous person, can be a politician, can be a local community person, can be a family member, and use the hashtags UKPW and OU at UKPW, so we can kind of find what those inspirations are. And there's more on that in the Changemakers guide itself. So thank you for attending. If there's anything you haven't had answered, you want answered, please put it on Twitter or email us, and we'll do our best to answer it. But thank you very much for coming.